I'd like to welcome our next speaker. Our next speaker is Dr. Hamid Rezapour. He is the founder and president of the Islamic Scholarship Fund, and he's well known to the Bay Area for the amazing work that his organization does. Please help me in welcoming him to the stage.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. What an awesome crowd, mashallah. Look at the size of this crowd. Look, there are a lot of great, wonderful speakers today, so I'm going to try to finish in 6 minutes, and I know we all want to hear from Dr. Stein. I want to cover two things in my short talk. One is about Muslim voting, and the other one is this crazy duopoly system that we live in. So, as it relates to the Muslim vote, according to the latest ISP study, Institute for Social Policy and Understanding, unfortunately, Muslims have the lowest voter registration between kind of the four major groups. So Muslim voter registration is at 81%. That's compared to 90% for the Catholic community, 91% for American Jews, and a whopping 99% for white evangelical Christians. Yes, so not only we have the lowest registration, but I want to clarify something. It doesn't mean 81% of Muslims are voting. Out of every 100 eligible Muslim voters, only 81% are actually registered. The others are what the report calls inshallah voters. We'll vote later, inshallah. Okay? So it is, unfortunate to me, it's beyond disappointing because it's so easy to vote. You know, no one gets impacted by voting more than us. And I want to encourage one person in each family to take a leadership role and take the whole family out to voting and like make it a family event. Our votes need to matter. If I was the Grand Mufti of the Muslim world, I would make it haram for not voting. First, you have to vote, then you can go to Hajj. The second thing I want to talk about is this, again, this strange duopoly that we live in. In the last, let's say, couple of 100 years of US history, there's been 3 legitimate and kind of serious attempts at developing a third party. The last one in our lifetime was, if you guys remember Ross Perot, you guys remember the billionaire from Texas, where he spent $300 million of his own money, reached somewhere around 7 to 8% of the vote in the general election. And if you remember, the night before the last presidential debate, where all 3 candidates were supposed to be on the debate, he pulled the plug and kind of dropped out of the race. We all kind of have our own theories about why that happened. I have my own conspiracy theories. We can talk about that later. But the reality is that we are the only developed country in the world that has 2 parties, okay? And if you remember the great Ralph Nader, I was at a fundraising event in Fresno with him 20-something years ago. He said something I'll never forget. He said, we are all victims of a duopoly, of a 2-party system that protects itself, that will not allow for the existence of a third party because it undermines them. It's really an existential question for them. And there are actually studies and data that proves this. So there's a Wall Street Journal study, conservative paper, that says around 35 years ago, 70% of Americans solidly either identified themselves as Republican or Democrat. Okay? Fast forward to today, 60% of Americans do not identify themselves as Republican or Democrat. Okay? Now, yeah, I mean, let's think about that for a second. Over half of the voting bloc in the entire country does not want to be associated with Democrats or Republicans, but there isn't a party to support them and to represent them. And therein lies the opportunity, right? So what's the solution? Obviously, a third party. Right? So we are, I think you all know, we were just having a conversation even at our own table. Our community is a bit divided on this issue of, let's call it the punish Democrat strategy versus the lesser of the evil 2 voting strategy. I say we don't need to talk about it in California, right? We have the luxury of voting with our conscience here, right? We don't need to further divide our own community. We can vote for a party, and in fact, the only party that's for sensible immigration, that is for true climate change policies, is the only party that believes that healthcare is a human right, is the only party that believes that access to free education is a human right, and just to name a few. And honestly, from my personal perspective, it's really the only party that's aligned with our Islamic values. I know it's not perfect, but nothing is perfect. So, and it's also one other thing, and I think everybody here knows this, they do not take super PAC money. This is individual donations, mashallah. So again, in my opinion, we don't need to have this kind of divisive talks here. Let's put our support and our resources behind Dr. Jill Stein and Brother Bilal. Let's show the Democrats that they cannot come to our communities, raise money, and disappear when we need them. Let's send a message to the Democrats that we're not for sale and our vote is not for sale. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.